Alright guys, in this video I wanted to talk about how to know whether or not you need more volume or more intensity in your powerlifting program in order to blow past whatever plateau that you're dealing with and actually make progress. So there are going to be some main things I'm looking at as far as how many athletes are moving as well as what they are reporting. So first things first, we're just going to talk about how do I know my athlete needs more volume. This is going to be a combination of things. Number one is going to be, if I look at how my lifters are moving, I'm usually going to see that they're moving like a pretty good pace. Like they're moving the weights looking a lot easier than what they are reporting to me. Here's an example I'm going to put up, which is basically going to be my client Justin, who is complaining about his deadlift feeling like pretty heavy, even though you can look at it and be like, that looked very, very easy. This is just a sign that you need more skill practice with the actual movement pattern for it to feel normal and familiar to you. A good example of this is to anyone who's done it at a powerlifting meet and has had a large taper or has had a very extreme deload. You will notice that when you kind of come back after that deload or that taper period, things just feel really heavy, even though you're looking back on video and they're moving easy. That's just a sign of detraining, not having enough training stimulus, enough exposure to that movement pattern for your body to feel comfortable in that. So that's when when I'm going to add in a small amount of volume to basically allow for my client to feel a little bit better. And usually that's going to be on the secondary day, whatever day is coming right prior to that primary day. Because how I look at things most of the time is, if I'm going to add like one set, I want to start with that secondary day. I might go into like a certain amount of top end as far as sets that I'm going to be programming per session on the main lift's primary day. But usually it's like, if going into that primary session, they're not feeling very good, I'm looking at the very low amount of, volume on that day. That's probably where I'm first going to go. And then just go up until they start feeling more comfortable, usually, adding 1 or 2 sets to that point. Now, how do I know that a lifter needs more intensity? This is going to be something where if I have my lifter, if they feel good up until they get to a certain point of intensity, they're going to report kind of feeling like that weight just feels really, really, really heavy. A really good example of this can be actually found with bench press, I think. I think bench press is the lift that needs the most amount of intensity across a training week. And lots of times people will report, my lift feels really, really good. Benching feels really, really good until I get to about like 80% of my max, 85, maybe 90%. And that's when they basically have more exposure to that intensity threshold across the week. And so a really easy way to do this is basically you can add in, so you're only doing one, single at, certain percentage, 85+%. You can add in another single on your secondary day and see if that's enough. And if that's not enough, they're still like recovering well, but they just feel like, man, I'm not feeling that good. There's no reason why you can't put that in even on a third bench day, like in another single or another heavier tops at that intensity threshold. Most of the time, if I'm programming in some intensity stuff, most of the volume I'm going to be programming in for most of my clients as far as accumulating total work is going to be somewhere within that 60 to 80% of their 1 rep max, depending upon their leverages, how they can recover, etc. But I'm usually going to have them between that 60 to 80%, and then that top end practice is going to be 80 to 100%. So I'm basically going to start at probably at the lower end of that range, slash identify, okay, like what is the actual weight that you get to where your technique just feels really bad or feels so much heavier, and then I'm going to give them more practice with that. And that's essentially how I would look at troubleshooting and needing intensity. It's mostly going to be top end intensity exposure. And then I'm going to, there is something to be said about increasing the average intensity, but usually that would only be done after I'm going to be increasing the top end intensity. Then I might, do some calculations about, okay, where on average are we getting a lot of our volume in? And then I'm going to basically modulate the rep range to try to keep that average intensity similar, but I'm going to, basically lower down the rep range to allow for that higher intensity threshold while maintaining a certain amount of relative intensity that I know that my athlete can respond well to, because I think it can be a really, I guess, negative thing sometimes if you just add in like higher RPE all over the place, because that's changing a lot of things with the program. And most of the time, like when I'm programming for my clients, I think most good powerlifting coaches, we're trying to find that RPE range that feels like really, really good for the athlete. Most of the time, on bench press, it's going to be between RPE 5 to 7 for most of the volume, and then squat and deadlift, like it can be it's a wider range of like RPE, like literally like I'd say on average like probably 3 to 7 is like where I'm programming. And I want to keep that consistent, but I'm just modulating the actual load on the bar. And because I think that's a really big part of just powerlifting, is like modulating load on the bar is going to make a big difference in most cases. For most lifters, especially if they've been making progress, as opposed to just adding in more volume. The only time I'm just adding like a ton more volume, in that case, like a lifter just feels like overly fresh. And I'm looking at like their volume, and like, yeah, you know, they probably could benefit from a little bit more. But hopefully that all makes sense. I'll post some examples up on the screen. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, ask me down in the comments below. If you guys want some personalized help with your powerlifting programming so you guys can actually reach your genetic strength ceiling, click the link down below to apply for coaching. I'll hop on a free phone call with you just to discuss your goals a little more and see how I can help you if you'd be a good fit for my coaching program. So talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.